Alright, Victorum Gaming fans, we're back with some more SPQR action. Today we're going to cover basically the last of the normal factions for the game, that's Thebes. We will be talking about the mercenaries in a separate video too, but they're not necessarily a separate faction that you would normally play. But anyway, Thebes, so again we start off with our history, really cool stuff to learn about there. Especially the Sacred Band, and being one of the Greek armies, they do have that mediocre archery rule, so basically you're going to get an extra -1 penalty unless you take a special action before that, before you shoot, basically. So something to consider, especially if you're trying to shoot at long range. You're really not going to do much. So moving on to the hero, clocking in at 50 denarii, range 1, melee 2, 2 dice. Agility 2 and Bravery 3 are really good, and no gear here, so again this is going to be more one of those toolboxes where you will basically build this hero to what you need. Thebes, as far as the rest of the army is concerned, does not have access to cavalry, so you do have an option for a horse here on the hero at 40 denarii, but unless you're taking mercenaries, there are no cavalry in this list, so something to consider. Unlike Athens, which is a little bit more diverse, but this is more like Sparta, where you're just basically all infantry. But you have the usual options, so you got large shields. You can go kind of light, medium, heavy with the armor. You got helmets, linothorax, and cuirass, arrow aprons. You can go long spear for the weapons there. A dagger, again, seems pretty much pointless. Sword will probably be a common one. Bow, potentially, depending on what kind of build you're going with there, or a sling even. You can also give them some javelins. So again, really you can get this out to what you need. The horse would be kind of an interesting option though, because again you don't have any native cavalry to your list. So you're certainly going to be able to get around a little bit more, but sort of having a mounted hero try to join like an infantry list or something like that, it's a little bit well, not necessarily questionable, but certainly something to maybe try or consider, but integration might be a little bit tough there. But having maybe one mounted hero who can maybe be geared towards going out and getting objectives or dealing with lighter enemy units or flanking units or something like that could certainly be an option. But you might be thinking about giving that lone hero maybe some support, or maybe even doing like multiple mounted heroes, who knows. But by and large, this is going to be an infantry focused army. So we go over to our sort of main unit, and as you might expect, it's hoplites. So all the usual stats here. No agility, which is a bit surprising. Figured they might have gotten like a +1 there, but 2 bravery, 2 melee, and 2 melee dice. They do come with a large shield and a long spear for your 12 denarii, and then you can keep them super cheap like that, or go the usual armor routes. Again, you got the light, medium, and heavies there. Helmet, linothorax, and cuirass. Arrow aprons are pretty good here as far as price. You get them at a discount, really, 1 denarii each, or denarius. A sword might be something to consider, and you do have an option for a horn, but no standard here. And they do have the phalanx rule, as you might expect. So a typical build might be giving them a linothorax for some solid armor, and then a sword just for that extra parry in close combat too, if the spear isn't necessarily the better option for the moment. So that would clock them in at 20 apiece, and you can still have them be relatively affordable. So, and that's basically them, yeah. So no real deviations or tricks or anything there. And then Thebes does have a really interesting unit, which is kind of like a mix between a hero and like an actual unit, and kind of going with the the backstory and the history of the actual Sacred Band here. Although I kind of wish there would be some other options, but we'll talk about that in a second. So Sacred Band clocks in at a base 100 denarii, and that's because you're getting basically 2 heroes, so an Eromenos and an Erastes. And you can see very similar stats. They basically flip-flop between melee and melee dice, and bravery and agility and stuff like that. So, and one has 2 wounds, one has 3 wounds. So, and yeah, they basically count as heroes, so they can be challenged. And they each come with a large shield and a spear, and then you can give them some pretty typical upgrades. So again, all the armor upgrades are there, kind of light, medium, heavy, although you're going to pay a premium on the cuirass with these guys. And then arrow aprons are a little bit more expensive, and swords should certainly be considered. just for that extra parry. You do have to buy, if you buy it for one, basically, if you're buying it for two, you have to pay for it twice, basically. Put it that way. They do have two special rules. If one member of the sacred band is removed as a casualty within line of sight of the other, the survivor will become blood drunk, as described on page 46, which basically is one of the talents. And basically, they kind of become a berserker. They'll double their dice. They can't parry, and basically they always have to move towards the closest enemy and basically trying to get into combat to try and avenge themselves, which can be cool depending on which one of these guys gets it. Whether it's the Eromenos having like 6 melee dice would be really cool, even though he's only hitting on +2, or the Erastes going up to 4 but hitting on 3. So again, it's just little things to consider there. And then you have the Sacred Vow, which is a Sacred Band is always bought as a pair at a cost of 100 for one of each of those guys. Options may be purchased again for either one or both members, cost being doubled and so on. So it's not so much a special rule as more or less explaining the way the upgrades for them would work. And that's basically it for them. So there's nothing really that special about them, and it's a little disappointing in a certain sense too. I kind of wish that Warlord would have maybe gone the approach of like having sort of two different versions of the Sacred Band, where you could have this kind of like pseudo hero version, but then like the actual unit, where you could just have sort of like a generic profile maybe, where these guys could again be actually bought in quantity to kind of represent the elite of the Theban army, which would be, I think, a little bit more accurate. Yes, they were paired, as they describe here, but being forced to basically have these guys be, two at a time, you could certainly buy multiples of these and I guess keep them close together and sort of form a sort of pseudo unit of heroes, but the cost is pretty expensive, and I think it would have been way more effective to just have like an actual unit of these guys and kind of have them be the elite of the army, similar to like what the Immortals are for Persia, the Praetorians for Rome, the Hypaspists for Macedonia, etc. And something that would have then similarly been able to like stand up to the Spartan hoplites as the history goes. So I think that would have been a better service for the army, basically. But these guys certainly can have their uses. But again, a sort of a downside of them, with like the cost you pay here and what you get, they count as infantry heroes, but then they don't have any access to talents either. So I feel like maybe being able to choose like one talent per each of these guys would have been something that would have been great for the cost that you pay here. So so just something to consider. It's still a cool unit, but I just feel like they could have done a little bit more with that. So then moving on, we come to basically your missile troop options. You get Peltists and Psiloi. So we've again talked about these guys in other videos, but just really briefly to reiterate. So the Peltists do come in at range +2 with 8 denarii base. Basically everything else is very low level stats. They come with 1 javelin and a small shield, and really for the most part you're going to be buying these guys more javelins and letting them do their thing. Helmet, I mean, armor seems to be a waste of time here with these guys. Buying them a horn could be interesting. They do have the hit and run rules, so a possibility of buying them a swords. So like once the javelins are done, you might be able to go in and charge some weaker units and try to cause some more damage. Yeah, these guys are basically your javelin delivery system. And then you have the Psiloi, which you can also go the sort of mix between a little bit of melee and range here, but these guys really serve a different purpose. So they come with daggers and stones, but really I don't really see a point in keeping them like that. So you could definitely go the bow option and have a great quantity of them, but again, with the mediocre archery rule, you're going to be basically firing once a turn, unless you want that extra -1. Certainly you're going to be doing that if you're at long range, but if you want to fire twice, you'll be basically firing on 6s at short range, which could be okay again depending on the quantity you have. But the other option is you can go with some javelins for these guys, and they're only 1 denarius each here, so you could load these guys up with 3 javelins and still clock in at just a little bit, actually a lot less than Peltist at the similar level, but again your stats are much weaker here. The other option is to transform these guys into slingers, which brings them up to 8 denarii, and really that gives you some long range firepower. And just like the bows, really you're probably only going to be shooting once a turn anyway, because of the way the slings work. So getting a solid chunk of these guys would be a good option. And then on the close combat side, you can go with swords and basically like animal skins or bucklers, or the way that reads, maybe both if you buy them twice there, basically 2 denarii for the skins and 2 for the bucklers. But again, then the cost is certainly going up on that, and yeah, you can do a little bit of work in close combat, but again, these guys aren't there to be a frontline close combat unit. They do also have the hit and run rules, which is why we bring that up, just in case that is an option. You kind of need like a light harassing unit maybe. And that's basically it. Like we said, there's no cavalry, there's no other tricks or anything, nothing that really super stands out for the Thebans. Again, I feel like having more flexibility for the Sacred Band and making like an actual unit out of it would have been something worthwhile. So hopefully maybe down an expansion down the road or some other revision that might happen for them. The Thebans do have a solid access to various mercenaries, which can make up for some of those shortcomings though. So they can go Athens, Macedonia for themselves, or Sparta. Again, interesting that you'd be able to pick Sparta, but we'll talk about that in maybe another video. And then on the named mercenary side, you do get Cretan archers, so really if you want the best of the best there. Mercenary hoplites, which doesn't seem like it would be worthwhile. And then if you do want to add that cavalry, and you can actually get Thessalian cavalry, Thracian peltasts if you want those, or super peltasts, and Thracian warriors if you want more like a little bit of a different close combat unit. All right, and then we go on to the hero side. We do get 2 of them here, so we'll start with Pagondas here. So he clocks in at 150 denarii, and some pretty solid stats here across the board. Range 2, melee 3, 3 dice, plus 2 agility, 3 bravery, plus 2 on the armor, and 4 wounds. He's listed as a level 5 hero. His move should probably be a 5, considering he's wearing linothorax. Seems like that might be another typo. He's got some solid talents: About Face, As One, Fight in the Shadows, which actually should say Fight in the Shade, Inspire, Pushback, Voice of Command. And then he comes with a large shield, linothorax, long spear, and sword, so he's basically well kitted out there. So 2 pretty neat special abilities. Tactical Mind, so he has an uncanny knack for knowing how his enemy will deploy, and can employ his tactical mind to reposition his own troops in response. At the start of any battle, after all units on both sides have been deployed, roll a d3. That's how many friendly units may immediately be moved up to 12 in any direction, so long as they remain within the Theban deployment zone, which is pretty cool. We've seen similar abilities with other people, but the caveat there was that they had to get in cover or be behind cover. This one just says move it within 12 as long as you stay within your deployment zone, which is actually really an upgrade. So pretty cool there. And then Reserve Force, when you're doing that ability up above, you can actually pick one of the units, one of those units, or it could be even the one that Pagondas is in, if he is in a unit, and move them off the board basically as a reserve. If Pagondas succeeds in making a bravery check at the start of any Theban phase, that unit may immediately be moved onto the battlefield from any table edge in the Theban deployment zone, performing 2 actions as normal. So depending on the board and the mission and stuff like that, and what the deployment zone is, that could actually be pretty neat. And then on his talents, so About Face is again the one where you can basically turn a phalanx and stay a phalanx basically for a phase. As One is actually kind of an upgrade of that. So basically once per game, you get to do that About Face ability for free. Doesn't actually use up one of your actions when an enemy does an action within 12 inches of him. So not only do you get that free action, you kind of get to interrupt your opponent's turn for a second to do that. So basically gives you some reaction ability there to move your phalanx if you've done or moved yourself into a phalanx position and you need to maybe change your facing. So Fight in the Shade, so basically you can it's a special action, but you can reroll your armor saves versus missiles. But if somebody gets you into combat before you've done any other action, then you're actually going to be at -2 to your melee, and you won't get the phalanx rules because you're more focused on dealing with missiles. Inspire, again, we've seen that so many times. So friends within 12 get to reroll Will to Fight. Pushback is a really awesome ability. So you basically make an opposed bravery check with the enemy. You add bonuses to yourself for every 5 models you have, and then you basically, if you win, you push them back and you follow up immediately with a fight, and during that fight they won't get the use of their shields, which really should probably win you that round of fighting and help you wipe them out. And then voice of command, again, we've seen that a lot. So basically, friendly units within 6 get +1 to their bravery. So again, a really solid army across the board as far as bravery is going to be concerned. And then we come to the other guy here, similar in points, Pelopidas, 175 denarii. So his movement is already actually reflecting his armor. Only range 1, but +3 to melee, 4 dice, 4 agility. I don't think we've seen that before, so really cool there. +4 bravery, +2 armor, 6 wounds. Got, again, large shield, line of thorax, long spear, and sword. And he's got a special ability, Trapped and Challenged. So he has a sharp eye for powerful and effective enemies, and he makes it his business to hunt them down. A challenge issued by Pelopidas cannot be refused, so that's actually pretty nasty. Furthermore, if there is more than one enemy hero present in combat, he can choose which one must accept his challenge. So he's really good at maybe trapping and dealing with low-level heroes because they can't really hide and run away. So this would be great for removing like enemies like utility heroes and things like that. He's no slouch in close combat, but none of his talents really kind of take him to that next level in combat. So just like Pagandas, he does have about face, so he can turn his phalanx. Battlefield control is really cool. Again, we've seen that many times. Very long, complicated ability, but long and short of it is basically you don't have to really test will to fight if you don't want to. Dirty fighting, so here's where you can kind of try to get some advantages in combat. So basically his attack, if it damages, he can basically skip that to go for like a bravery check, or sorry, agility check, I think, and has a chance basically at knocking the enemy down. And then he can kind of go to work from there. Loyal Bodyguard's cool. Again, we've seen that a lot. So basically, if you pair him with another lower level hero, basically that hero will tank wounds for him. So basically a way of keeping him alive longer. And that way he can go after and challenge the heroes that he needs to challenge. Then we got Mighty Blow, so another way for him to maybe get ahead in combat. Only 1 attack, but if it does damage, it does triple wounds, and then the chance for a knockdown as well. And then Motivation, we've seen that a lot. So basically a unit that hasn't activated it yet can get 3 actions for that phase. And then Voice of Command, again, friendlies within 6 get +1 of their bravery. So that's basically been Thebes. It's a pretty interesting army faction, and again, very similar to the other Greeks, but not necessarily as diverse as Athens, not necessarily as elite as Sparta, and we won't really compare them to Macedonia, but the Sacred Band does add an interesting wrinkle there where you can basically add many more heroes in sort of little pseudo 2-man units, and you don't necessarily have to keep them together, but you do want them to be close enough together to be able to at least activate that passionate bond ability. But again, I feel like there was a little bit of a misstep here where really these guys should really just actually have been like an elite unit for the army, and then maybe like give the hero and some sort of option to be considered part of the Sacred Band or something like that. So that's basically about the only gripes I would say I have with the Thebans as is, but still really cool faction to collect. Really gorgeous models, really interesting on the painting side. So if you guys like that video, go ahead and hit us with a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and then stay tuned for more SPQR content.